Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. I got to travel all the way from Seattle, Washington to be here with you guys today. By a show of hands, I would love to know how many of you have actually heard of Nordstrom. Okay, great. So a lot of people have actually heard of Nordstrom. How many of you have actually done a lot of online shopping lately? All right, great. So today I'm really excited to be here to talk really about lean UX and how we've been able to transform Nordstrom, a 116-year-old retailer, to really think forward about experiences, focusing on the customer, and utilizing the practice of lean startup, lean UX techniques to really move it forward. So just to kind of give you a little bit of an update about myself, I'm really supporting a team of about 45 individuals. And the team is responsible for the customer experience all the way from the app to the actual store experience, as well as all the way through any digital property that we have in any part of Nordstrom. So you may ask, Nordstrom, it's a 116-year-old retailer, you say. And I came in, coming from Starbucks, just working on the Starbucks app. We had a small team kind of building that experience. My goal was to really come into Nordstrom and try to transform the opportunity that we had in front of us, with the stores themselves being an opportunity to sort of look at the channel-specific opportunities for customers. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Nordstrom. Really, the company itself started in 1901, and that's a long time ago. A gentleman by the name of JWN, or John W. Nordstrom, came with $5 in his pocket from Sweden. His goal was the American dream, and he partnered with Carl Wallen, and they really were trying to figure out how do they break into the industry, how do they build something that was all about customer experience. So they partnered together, and they actually opened a shoe company right in Seattle, and it started with the promise to ensure that customer experience was at the very top of the focus. And so lots of years went by. In the 70s, the company grew to $100 million revenue. And stores continued to grow. We have 357 stores. We're across 40 states, and we're in Canada and Puerto Rico as well. So it's continuing to grow. There's lots of momentum. And just in 2016, the company reported a $14 billion revenue. Now, these things all sound really exciting and good, but something interesting happened in the last 10 years. A lot of us have been shopping, as you guys told me earlier today, that you've been shopping online. You know about Nordstrom. There's a lot of great places to shop right now. There's a lot of e-commerce experiences. There's a lot of technology that's enabling things that have never been there before. So think about this. I walk into a 116-year-old retailer wanting to build new practices with lean, but they've never done it before. And the transformation of retail is real. I live it every single day. I wake up in the morning, I look at the news, I try and see what is happening with our customers, what is happening in the market, and what's happening with technology. But just as Michael said in his previous talk, a lot of what we do when we start these processes and programs is to try to get sponsorship. So one of the things that I'm going to focus on today is a little bit about how do you actually get sponsorship in companies that are this large and enterprise-focused. So I want to talk to you about the agenda, just to give you a full overview. I thought Michael did a great job talking about a lot of the practices and the processes. But we at Nordstrom, my goal is actually to consistently connect with the customer, to find ways in our experience to make sure that we're solving customer problems. And that's really what my job is every single day. I want to tell you a little story that actually got me excited when I joined Nordstrom. And it really talks to me about why user experience and the customer focus and solving customer problems really comes together. So picture Alaska, maybe 50 years ago. A gentleman comes in with 2 tires into a Nordstrom store. He puts the tires on the table and he says, I want to return these. The customer service person, the salesperson says, absolutely. He reaches out, gives him some money, and says, thank you. What does that mean? What does that mean right in that moment? It means that the customer came in with a problem. What had happened is there used to be an automotive store right where that particular Nordstrom was. The customer felt frustrated and said, I have these tires. This store existed before. Now it's a Nordstrom. That story, that actual piece has been the focus or the heart of the company for so many years. And so a lot of people ask me, what is the main goal when you're working at Nordstrom? And my main goal is to serve the customer where he or she is at every single moment. I don't think about the customer in one channel. I think about he or she in all channels. And I have to think about the loyalty of that customer as well. And using lean UX, using those principles that Michael spoke about, prototyping, sketching, being able to interact with your customer consistently, these are the ways you can actually focus on the customer day to day. So really quickly, we went through a little bit of the history. I'm going to talk a little bit about UX design and what it means to me and me at Nordstrom. I've run design teams for a long time, for about 15, 20 years. And in a large enterprise, Fortune 250 company, you really need to make sure that you're adding value every single day when you're working in a discipline that doesn't necessarily have clarity. I've been working in this field, specifically UX design, for about 10 years. And at a company that's 116 years old, it's important to try and talk to your leadership about what it is and the value that you bring, not only for the customer, but also from a revenue perspective. How are you utilizing techniques that can bring in revenue, delight, and surprise the customer at the same time? The other aspect is really what is lean and why do we use it? And why I bring that up is there's a lot of great principles. There's so many things that you can learn about. We've taken a toolkit of things that have worked for us, and I want to talk to you a little bit about the things that have worked and some challenges we've faced as well. And then how do you, as a leader, as a manager, as a developer, just as an individual, bring this home when you go back to where you're at? And then we'll do some Q&A. I talked a little bit about these two entrepreneurs that really came from different upbringings and created something quite amazing. The thing that's happening right now for us is, we've got these stores, and they're great footprints. There's merchandise, there's beauty, there's fashion. Nordstrom being a fashion retailer, bringing in merchandise at every given point, we have a lot of people focused on that energy. And then we have an entire organization, technology and UX and business, that's about transcending. How are we going to connect with the new customer? How are you going to make sure that the millennial, the Gen Z, is understanding and connected to our brand? And to be completely clear, how are we solving, at every given point, a customer problem? So we're really talking about a set of an omnichannel experience. And what I mean by omnichannel is we know that when a customer shops in one channel, he or she shops in another channel. It's just that simple. We have data that supports that. And we understand that a journey starts from one place and can go back and forth to other places. How many people have ever shopped online and then come back to your mobile device and then maybe gone into a store in particular? Have you guys ever done that? Yeah, some of you? All of you. Okay, great. We as customers are completely focused on ensuring that our experience can transcend every part of a brand's experience. We expect that when we walk into a store, if we've given our information, that company knows who we are. We expect when we go on our app that that company recognizes us and gives us loyalty to them. And then we also know for a fact that when we transact regularly, we expect things to happen for us that's uniquely different than if we shop somewhere else. So these are the kinds of things my team is laser focused on. And how do we win on top of all the other e-commerce places that are out there? And you guys know that there's several of them that we're competing with. So this is just an example of where my team spends a lot of time, on the web as well as the mobile app, but certainly in the stores. And that's an interesting conundrum, because if you think about it, a customer, if they do have a store nearby, they have the opportunity to go in and connect with a salesperson. That's another whole paradigm that we have to shift to, because 116 years, guys, that's a long time for selling clothes in a store. But now people are continuously moving to the e-commerce engine. So we have 20% of our revenue is coming from e-commerce, where I'd say 30 years ago that obviously was not the case. So my team's job is to try to find fast, efficient, quick ways to test, iterate, and experiment to get to our customers sooner and faster. So before I go into this slide, I want to kind of let you guys know that when I came into Nordstrom 3 years ago, one of the reasons I was excited was totally that tire story. I mean, let's be honest, that's a great story. But also because I had the opportunity back in the day to work in the store when I was 15. And I was a pretty young girl, and I got a chance to understand the business, understand what was going on. But ultimately, the challenge for Nordstrom right now is really to figure out how to become user-centered in a new way. So what is UX? I think UX is really solving customer problems to really create these seamless interactions, these delightful experiences, the ability for a customer to feel like you know them as a brand, to feel like they're getting something from you as a result of participating in this exchange. And the majority of the time that we spent at Nordstrom is describing this exact slide. So I will admit, just as Michael said in the earlier talk, sponsorship is crucial for a lean startup to actually function and work. So I started as a senior manager at Nordstrom, and nobody really knew what UX was. They walked around saying, okay, we know you design stuff, we know you kind of make technology go a little bit slower and faster, and you've got some research and whatever, but they didn't understand it. So my first step was to work with my team to go to our leadership and actually knock on the door, Eric, Pete, Blake, Nordstrom, and say, let us talk to you about the new age and what we're trying to do with technology and experience. And we brought them into our process. We had them co-create with us. And they were open to it because, again, a 116-year-old company that's going through massive change is open to people coming in and bringing that change to them. So I want to just emphasize the fact that the openness to the culture change, absolutely coming from the top. And you take several different angles. You start by bringing them into the experiences around customers. So we have a couple of labs, usability labs that we call them, where our customers come in and we do paper prototypes. So we sketch things out and we actually have the prototypes available for our customers to use. And we invited our leadership in to watch our customers go through that process. Those tactics, just as Michael said, really balance out the question of, what is it that we're doing for our customer? So that's an important factor. The other part is if leadership is not open to that, one of the things you can do is try to knit it back to the results. So how are you efficiently using these processes to actually make a result faster than you would before? At Nordstrom, when I came in, and this is really exciting because going to the other tracks over there, I'm hearing about these innovative development techniques that I'm excited we could potentially use now at Nordstrom. But 3 years ago, our entire stack was very, very old, outdated, and they call it spaghetti code. And we're working through that. So we had these monolithic, huge feature cycles that took several months. And we couldn't utilize these principles. But we walked in and we said, we need to modernize that stack so we can actually start utilizing the iterative flow of technology and UX together. So those are two things that actually helped push forward this transformation at Nordstrom. And I want to make sure you guys know that we're still learning, we're still growing. There's so much opportunity for us to continue on that path. So, like I said before, a lot of our leadership and others, sometimes people say, are you an artist? Do you draw things? I get that, but I don't understand kind of what do you mean by UX. And for those of you who know or don't know, really it's a process. It's about understanding the customer pain points. It's about utilizing iteration and prototyping and connecting with the customer all throughout that journey. And absolutely, it's about having that artistic expression, the brand expression, but it's a combination of it all coming together. And the one thing I want to say about user experience is it's so closely tied to technology and development. There has never been a time where I haven't felt so connected to my developer when they come up with an interaction model or an experience that actually enhances the customer experience even more. So it's this dance between development, design, and product management, and it's a process, not an art. So at Nordstrom, we really have a brand that's been sustained for a long time, and we also have products that really shine from an experience standpoint. we also know that we have to understand just generally what's happening in the industry and the market with our customers. So we do have a group of individuals that go out and pull insights. These are things that generally you can find at any point if you connect with a market research organization. But we really use it to help define some of our experiences. And so values around the brand, around what does the brand really mean? It means inclusion, it means connection, it means fashion. How do we bring that into our experience when we're talking about user experience? Interests. So what's hot right now? What kind of experience can we shine a light on that's going to be uniquely different and a differentiator to our competition? We're always thinking about that in user experience as well. And then from an insight standpoint, it's so crucial for us to continue to understand the market, the trends that are happening, not only from fashion, but technology. What are people using? What is the next social media that we need to get connected to? What is the next thinking that we are not aware of right now from our Gen Zers? What are we doing that we need to push ourselves further? And then understanding the whole market landscape. So these are things that we also include in our study too. So Michael did a great job of talking about the process. One of the things that I wanted to kind of show in this diagram is really that it's a continuous sort of evolutionary loop, like an infinite loop, if you will. And it really does start for us with research. So I had the opportunity to come in at Nordstrom sort of halfway through the research team's beginning. And what I mean by that is we have a team of researchers that actually take customers in and utilize prototypes, paper, functional, developed prototypes, and actually ask them questions based on these experiences. And that has helped us really seal the deal with our development teams, because way up in the funnel, when you're actually showing a paper prototype or something that's not fully developed, you're saving the company's time, you're saving the company's money, and you're saving your development team's time as well. And you're learning and iterating all along the way. So we're lucky because I put 2 labs, usability labs, right near our executives. So that way, every time they kind of walk by, they see customers coming in, and they see these focus groups looking at these experiences. And it gives you an indication of this cultural shift that we're actually asking our customers to co-create with us. Sketching. I think a lot of us think that when you start with a design, you really start with a full-fledged, high-fidelity kind of experience. I really encourage, just like Michael does, the ability to sketch, to prototype in a very low-fidelity format. It has helped me save probably millions of dollars for several companies, and it also gets other people to understand that it's an interaction. It's not about the design at the end. That's one part of it. And then testing and then launching. I think I'll go deeper into these areas, particularly from an e-commerce perspective. We've just now started doing some very simple tests that have helped us move quicker. And then we know that when we launch, we're never done. It's a cycle that goes all the way back. And at any point, our customers voting with their clicks, voting with their experience. And we listen to that, and we watch it. And that's one of our biggest challenges to continue to do as we grow and change. All right, so how many have ever had a hamburger and fries? Okay, or a steak? I know I've been there. I have 2 kids. They're 5 and 7. They're super impatient. I think they're like Generation Glass. They're the ones that literally came out of the womb with the screen in front of them. So we sit down and we have lunch, and there's these 2 bottles of ketchup, right? So the glass one where you're trying to open it, even like the top's really tough to open. You turn it over and you're just hitting it back and forth. And I know that the slogan is wait for something about waiting is a good thing. But we know at a fact that our customers in general don't want to wait. So Heinz did a very interesting thing. They obviously changed the bottle format. They made it more functional. They increased the size of the design. The logo changed. There's so many things that they have done in this model that it even impacted their brand, right? So the good things come to those who wait. But now it's actually, let's meet our customers where they are. Their fries are hot. Their burger's hot. They need to get that ketchup out as soon as possible. So this is another example of what UX does. 100% it's the design of this bottle, for sure, but it's the functionality. It's the ability to use it, and that's what software is all about. And if you guys can guess, it starts with a customer problem. The customer could not get the ketchup out of the bottle fast enough, so clearly Heinz made a choice to move it forward. So I kind of illustrate that. It's kind of a fun example, but really when you're thinking about user experience and technology melding together, it's about having the customer in mind at every point. I love to call this slide really the 3-legged stool. For those of us who work in an enterprise organization and have the opportunity to have product and user experience and technology together, one of the things that I love about the talk Michael gave is these teams that kind of come together as one. And you're hearing themes about that a lot today in the conference, and I can't emphasize that enough. When you have your product, user experience, and technology team together, really as this three-legged stool, you have this opportunity to bring forward such great innovation and ideation. Also, as a UX designer or a UX researcher, you're constantly bringing the customer to the forefront at every given point. And your product team member is consistently trying to figure out how the business metrics are going to make sense. And of course, your technologist is making everything work beautifully and ensure that you're building it for performant experiences. So this is how we work at Nordstrom. We co-locate. We spend a lot of time together with our product teams, with our technologists, and it's really important because it helps us push forward on the lean experience and tracks. I can't emphasize this enough. I think we know that UX is everywhere. Everything you touch, everything you feel that's actually functional and useful has had some thought put into it. And it's important to recognize that when you're trying to make a point with a leader, you're trying to figure out which process to use, but it really is about functionality and making sure that your brand can shine with that functionality. So why lean? You know, I think that we've had a chance at Nordstrom to experience some opportunities for this working, and some opportunities where we need to go back to the drawing board. I talked to you guys a lot about, the classic style of UX at Nordstrom, which is this, massive, awesome product. It's this huge vision that takes 6 to 9 months to get done. Super predictable. Yes, we're going to ship it on these dates and times. Super slow. There is no way we are going to make it if we're this slow. There is absolutely no way. And that's my job, is to come in and say, we need to go fast. We need to make sure that our teams are equipped with the right tools to make it happen so we can shift to lean UX. And I thought Michael did a great job of describing why and the reasons behind it. And to me, this most viable product, it's a great notion of trying to figure out the right key features to put in to test quickly. And he's not wrong that it is not easy to do, because absolutely every product manager, every leader wants to just pummel and put more things into that first MVP. And it's the job of the product and UX team and researchers to really try and make sure that you focus on what the customer needs at that moment and that you're actually creating that software in that way. It is less predictable, and that's challenging for a big company because we like to know dates and we like to know how much money we're spending on everything. And so that takes the ability of leadership, sitting down with them, talking through this process, and actually describing why this is actually faster. And that's one of the things that we continue to do on an ongoing basis, and that's one of my jobs. The less predictability and the fast speed kind of help, because it's a good dialogue. Like, we're going to get something out faster. We may not know exactly the date, but it'll be between these time periods. And we're going to do it when our customers vote and say that it's the right experience. So that's sort of like letting go, if you will, for a company that's been very sort of programmatic and making sure that everything is on a schedule and list. So we know that the hyperspeed of technology is going bonkers. We're all experiencing it ourselves, and it's why we're all here. But a company like Nordstrom, it's one of the things that we continue to try to iterate with our leadership. And really the other aspect of making sure that we continue to bring our customers through the journey. It is not about showing them at the beginning, showing them at the end. It's literally having them with you along the whole path, helping to co-create the experience along the way. And then really the idea about creating these monolithic, big, huge feature sets where you're going to end up with something the customer doesn't even want. We are trying to avoid that like the plague. And it's actually proven to be very helpful because most of the time when you have an MVP and you have a hypothesis, 90% of the time I'm wrong, which is, I love to be wrong. I love to fail at my hypotheses all the time. It's a lot cheaper to do that with a very small group of features that you focus on versus a huge monolithic experience. So I'm a big fan of Eric's. He's obviously an entrepreneur that has done some amazing work and, again, really talks a lot about lean startup. The only way to win is to learn faster than anyone else. I don't think any of us, a lot of us have like a lot of assumptions about what's going to happen in the future of retail. I read probably every magazine, every particular site, and there's a lot going on around technology, all the different aspects of what we could do. But the one thing that I will say that we continue to push is speed. Speed matters, and it matters in a way that we can't really quantify right now because we're already late. And so getting ahead of speed is one of our biggest challenges at Nordstrom, which is why I love her in heels on a skateboard. It always makes sense to me. Okay, so the road to product. When I was at Nordstrom and I first started, about a year and a half in, we had this opportunity during holiday time. I don't know, how many guys spent a lot of money on e-commerce during holiday? A little bit, okay, a few of us. Yeah, you get online, you start shopping, and we had this idea, and no one had any funding, no one had it on the roadmap, but it was something our customers were asking us for, and we called it our first MVP, and it was about the ability to e-gift each other. So if I wanted to send a gift to a friend, the only way to do that is with an actual gift card right now at Nordstrom, or back last year. And so we wanted to create an experience where you could actually choose the item and send it to a friend. So we created this model. We had 4 people in the group: a technologist, a product person, a UX person, and then an analytics individual. And we set them off and we said, you have 2.5 months to figure this out. And it was an experiment, right? We didn't know if we were going to launch it. We didn't know what was going to happen. But we allowed them to have the research team at their will. So they built paper prototypes. That was the first thing they did. They got it in front of usability. And every single assumption that they had was wrong. And so they had to continue to go back to the drawing board, where by the end, about 2 weeks in, they were able to partner with the technologist to build an MVP, which was the most viable product at that time. And the e-gifting experience actually garnered a lot of revenue for the holiday period. It wasn't on the roadmap. Nobody had put it on there. But it came from an assumption and a set of hypotheses that we had about our customers. And so why I tell you that story is that you don't necessarily know where these ideas come from, but it's important to embrace them when they come from the customer, put a team behind it, and try to test that hypothesis. The beautiful thing about that team that I was excited about is they had this sense of entrepreneurship. They had this innovative energy. And then it sparked a light because, did that experience garner like the amount of revenue that we had hoped? Maybe, maybe not. But what it did is it changed the culture. It actually changed the culture of that team. And they got excited. They said, wow, we could actually ship software pretty darn fast if we want to. We could do it in quicker than we've ever done it. So that ignited a bunch of different things that started happening within the organization, where leaders started seeing if you actually put small, nimble teams together, you give them some free rein, you can actually ship quickly. And it's only the things most viable to the customer, if that makes sense. So we've seen a lot of these MVPs happen sort of under the radar, and companies like Airbnb, Virgin have all done these things for a long time. And what I love about these stories, a lot of them are similar, where you didn't really know what you're going to get, but they started with something that was very focused on the customer. So Airbnb started, as you guys all might know, with the 2 founders really not having enough money to start their own company. And they rented out their San Francisco loft and then started realizing when they posted pictures and got people into it for a design conference, people were interested. And it was like their little MVP. It was sort of a concierge MVP. And that gave them an indication, an insight that said, this is something really important, and they went for it. Dropbox created a video that actually talked about what Dropbox is. The interest increased, and people started signing up. Zappos.com is a e-commerce shoe company, and they similarly started taking pictures of shoes, posting it on a website, and then shipping the shoes to customers in a really quick manner. And then they are now all, I'd say, billion-dollar, if not billion-dollar businesses. And so what I'm trying to emphasize is that big companies that started small already have this in them, right? Virgin had one plane that went from one location to another, and now they have a fleet. But large companies can do this as well, as long as you have a team that can start building the culture, utilizing these MVP experiences to showcase that. So I'm switching over to Learn, and why I love this slide, it really talks a lot about the opportunity to spend time with your customer. There's user research, there's user personas, experience journeys, and I think, Michael, you had a lot of great things around prototyping and deeper studies in this. And then the 4th one is around hypotheses, which that is the area that I'd say the refinement from the Nordstrom perspective, at least on my team, is something we're working through. So, like I talked about, I support a team of researchers, And really, it's about getting our customers into our labs or in the store or in their environment so we can ask them questions about experiences that we are building before we actually design them. And so we have, just as you can imagine, customers coming in from all walks of life. All of our inclusive personas are part of that. And we really want to utilize their information and their data to make sure we're building not only the right thing, but we're on the right track from an indication standpoint. So we use interviews, we use focus groups, we put paper prototypes, real prototypes in front of them, and then we validate. We say, is this really the right direction for the experience? So I think what I really want to say is, if you can imagine being at a 116-year-old company, a lot of the leadership sometimes thinks they know the customer really well. And some of us build, unfortunately, for the customer that's ourselves. So if I'm creating a website, I like to shop. I love it. My sister loves to shop. We all do. So I'm starting to build something. And the challenge with that is you don't have a separation from yourself and the software. And so crucial is having user personas. And so this is a task that I put in front of our team and said, no longer will we talk about these experiences in our own words, they will be in the words of the user. And so we actually went out and did a study with market research, and we defined who our customers are. We tried to put together a set of actual personas, and we did. And we showcased them around the whole company. And our goal was to make sure that our product teams, our business teams, and our leadership utilized the actual personas instead of themselves. That in itself helps you define experiences that are uniquely different that you would have never thought of. And it also allows the leadership to realize, wow, the customer is continuously changing. So that's a big unlock that we were able to kind of jump into. And then experience journeys. Like I spoke about before, our customers are experiencing the Nordstrom brand or e-commerce in different ways. They're coming into the store, they're using their app. There's so many different ways, and you don't shop the same way you shopped on Friday that you shop on Tuesday. It's completely different. And so our job is to make sure that we don't think of every single experience as the same every time. It's a set of experiences. So you come to an e-commerce site, you want to just play around and discover for a while. Or you're coming there and you want to transact. That's all you're going to do on a Sunday night, let's say. Right before Christmas, you're there to pick up a set of things and put it in your wish list and get it done. Or you're there to be inspired. Now that could be one customer. So that's our challenge, is to continue to talk through from that omni-channel experience where our customers' mindset is, the empathy, making sure that we get that through, and using the personas to help drive that journey. So when I spoke about hypotheses, this is a scientific term that we like to use, especially at Nordstrom, because a hypothesis is really there to test our assumption. And a lot of times you have a hypothesis that you want to test, you don't necessarily know how to test it, and the challenge is being able to describe the experience to the customer to make that happen. So what we try to do is we really try to define our test case scenario of what we're trying to test every single time. So in the e-gifting experience is being able to create a very seamless way for customers to gift to each other, and that it's done over e-commerce. And that was the key thing. How do we test that? How do we iterate on it? And the interesting thing is you put it in front of customers once, and your hypotheses could be adjusted and changed because of the result that they bring you. And you continue that cycle kind of going through. So what I also want to talk a little bit about is, the phases of design that we go through. And in particular to Nordstrom, one of the things that I've been excited about is bringing on team members that can do sort of full stack design, if you will. So they can do all the way from sort of interaction or information architecture all the way through the visual design piece. It allows for speed. It also allows for development and design to kind of move faster. And it gives us a chance to sort of push forward on different experiences, whether it be mobile, whether it be desktop, whether it be other kinds of virtual reality and aspects of that. So I'm sure a lot of you have heard about interaction design and the need for it, but it really is about following the customer through a set of flows. And this is an aspect that I think is really important when you're thinking about lean, because again, it's not getting to the high fidelity. It could literally be a sketch of all of the flows a customer is going through, a wireframe that you can jot down so you can put in front of customers. That actually saves you a lot of time. I will admit I've made the mistake several times of having a very high fidelity experience ready for a customer to test, and they don't understand the structure of it. They don't understand why it's even in front of them. And so if you start with a sketch, you start with interaction, you're able to sort of see the flow and allow your customers to vote. So we are a pretty visual company. I mean, it is a brand, it's a fashion destination. And so we need to have that marriage, right, between interaction, between information architecture, and the visual piece of it. And the challenge that I face on a daily basis is the software has to be performant, too. It can't just slow down the customer. And that's sort of the difference between a graphic designer and user experience. I'm always trying to think about how do we make sure our customer is never feeling like things are going slow, but it's beautiful and delightful. And so that's my challenge, is being able to have an experience end-to-end that serves the customer also in the delightful way, but in a performant way so they can get their job done or the task done that's at hand. So testing. Can I get a time check? We good? 15? Okay. So testing has been an interesting part of Nordstrom. You can imagine, with those monolithic, like 6-month periods of times when we didn't ship software differently, we didn't do a ton of testing. And the testing would always sort of be outdated, right? You get a little bit of information, and then all of a sudden, everything changes, technology is different. Now we have an opportunity to really use A/B testing sort of on steroids, because we have all of these opportunities to pull in new feature sets, new experiences into our software. The challenge, though, is that it's a new muscle. I mean, a lot of us that come from the outside understand it, but it's really being able to educate our organization on what the value of that is and what it means to really do it right. And so as a team, as a group, we actually have to sit down and talk about the test, what the purpose is, and really an A/B test having a control experience, and then having something that changes in it, which is the B, and sort of measuring against each other. So if you're changing something in the checkout flow, and you leave the other experiment the same, how does it adjust and change? And what we're learning is that we need to get to statistical significance. We need to learn about what the customer is drawn to. And we also recognize that small changes mean big wins and also big challenges. So we are learning just as we go, and that's that iterative process where you've already gone through all the usability testing, you've brought the customer in to co-create, and now you're shipping software. So we typically take a small percentage of a new feature change, and we show it to our customers, and we measure it against the control. And we can do ABCs, we can do a lot of different testing. And so this is the world we're living in now. I know a lot of other e-commerce sites have been doing this for a long time, but it's now moving that 116-year-old Titanic into really, okay, we're shaping, we're changing, we're actually adjusting to the customer as he or she is voting. Usability testing, as I spoke about, that space in general, a lot of people say, well, I don't have the funds to build a team out for usability. I'm not able to get labs where I work, I'm in a startup. And I think to Michael's point, if you guys had a chance to hear his presentation, there's a lot of ways to get customer data. There's just so many different ways and structures to do it. Just do it. Because I don't know how many times technologists and UX folks have built experiences that don't have the customer problem in mind, and they end up not serving the need. And then they have to go back to the drawing board, and it makes it really challenging, not only from a business perspective, but also for them from a cultural perspective. And then analytics. I think this sort of marriage of these three aspects is something that we're trying to bridge together. It's a challenge because we've been siloed for a while, but it is important to say, all-up testing, how can we utilize that to really unlock things? So clickstream analysis, what are people actually tapping on? What are the experiences that are getting the most traffic? All of that matters in how we develop our experience from a lean perspective. So this is a bit of a case study, and it describes a little bit of the real reality of where we're at and some of the challenges that we face with utilizing some of the principles around lean. So this was about, let's see, in May and even in sort of the January timeframe this year, we had this idea that our customers brought to us. And they brought it to us in a very real way several different times in a lot of different studies. And shopping is pretty personal. It's something that matters. It's not a task where you know exactly what you want every time. There is that. But a lot of times you want to know what, from an outfit perspective, goes together. So if I have this dress, how do I know what other pieces are going to go along with it? And so that was born, this idea of dynamic looks. And so what we did, and I'll tell you the story about it, and I'll show you a little bit of this video, and you can find it on our mobile web experience, actually. But it was an assumption, and then it became a hypothesis that customers really do want help understanding how to outfit themselves. They want to know other products. They're interested in discovery, but it has to be relevant to them at that time. So we decided we would take a team, a small group again, of product, UX, and technologists, and we said, let's go after this idea. Now, they had several opportunities to bail and not have this happen. And I want to make that really clear. Like, it's actually pretty hard in a large organization to implement this lean practice unless you have sponsorship. So myself and my colleague and then leadership, we all got together and we said, we need to give this team room to be able to experiment. This experiment could fail, and actually we should allow it to. That's the beauty of utilizing lean. So once we got kind of the air cover gone and the e-gifting thing had happened 6 months ago, we had this culture, okay, let's go do it. So the first step was we were going to start measuring this, get this in front of customers. And we realized really quickly that outfitting is actually pretty complicated. It's not something that makes sense to people that haven't worked in the fashion industry. How do we pull in machine learning, all of those things? We didn't have any of those capability. But what we did have is people, because Nordstrom is a company about our people. And in the stores, you go in and they can merchandise things right away for you, like this dress goes with these shoes and this jacket as well. So we thought, well, we don't have all the capabilities from a machine learning perspective, but how about we take a couple of merchandisers and have them put together a set of outfits and then continue that cycle. And so that was an idea that came from the product manager because he thought of how to do this in a really quick, efficient way. And so we got 1,600 outfits created with all these different permutations, and they were all manual. And that was a new experience. We'd hoped to do it machine learning. We couldn't do it in time. So that was one piece. The other part of it is our software team, our team of developers, wasn't able to put this into their roadmap at the time. And that was a challenge because our technology resources are constrained. And we're a big enterprise. We're trying to do all sorts of things. So we actually had to find a new way to develop this and get put right into the software experience at a point where it was a bit risky. But we talked to our leadership and said, this is going to be an unlock for us. Let's start testing this. So we went through all the cycles of usability. We started with a sketch. We had our customers vote. We learned a lot through that process. And we finally came up with this concept where you're able to go to a product page, scroll down, and you can see the different items that go along with that particular dress. So I'm just going to play this. There's no audio. Let's see if I can get this to work. There we go. So you're shopping, and you see this dress, and you see all these things that go along with it. And you can see the touch target for the mobile experience is really important. We tested all of those aspects of it. This clutch, is now part of this experience. And that shuffle at the top, which is really helping us say, what other looks go along with this? We realized our customers, in talking to them in usability, also working with them after the fact, really were interested in ways to understand the whole outfit as a whole. None of those things we would have known if we hadn't done early on usability testing. And also, this would never have really gone out there if we didn't have a very small MVP that we focused on at the time. So why I bring this up is, in the real cases, it actually takes a lot of courage, and it takes a lot of ability to kind of look beyond the day-to-day of the practice. It takes a culture shift. It takes your leadership being open to this opportunity because you're going through incredible change. And it takes a small group of people to prove it throughout the journey. So we have several examples of this working and several examples of us failing with it as well. And we don't really have time for failure, but we have to be open to it. And so as a company, we're now really talking about we need to fail fast, we need to innovate, we need to make sure that we test, iterate, and optimize. And so it takes, again, it's this marriage between leadership, the team, and the whole company going through this process. And we by no means are there yet. We have a lot of room to grow. but it's definitely possible to bring these things home. So from a development standpoint, because I'm so passionate about making sure this makes sense from a developer standpoint too, is it's really important from that perspective to have developers participate in this. And we bring our developers, 5 minutes, okay. We have our developers part of every aspect of this, from all the way up front usability, sketching. Developers can have a lot of fun sketching with us, but also bringing products to life, right? That's the key thing, to have them be part of that. And I consider them my comrades throughout the whole journey. And then the other aspect is, from a developer perspective, a lot of code that you write or that's written, I mean, that takes time, takes energy, takes money. And we want to make sure that before we ask a developer to build anything, it's data-driven. This is going to be a factor that's going to help the customer in this way. And so it's crucial for us to do that with our development team. And then lastly, making sure that we help them either attend usability sessions or we bring customers in to look at their software, and that really can help drive the engagement forward. So to end, I just want to say that I think Lean UX has been an incredible unlock for Nordstrom. It takes all of the aspects of the organization to be open to it, but it definitely is a possibility to really make things go fast and really change a 116-year-old retailer to be in the new century. And I'm super excited about it, so thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sorry. A few questions through the app here. One is, how long did it take to convince leadership to become sponsors?
Yeah, that's a great question. So what I would say is that it didn't take long for them to understand what the practice is, because it's a great opportunity to show them. I think showing storyboards, showing design, showing that aspect of things really helps, showing software and how it's developed is the first thing. It took us probably about 6 months to really get them to see this as an unlock, and then the second level of 6 months after that was when they saw us as a strategic influencer, but we had to prove ourselves. So it's all about being able to storytell and talk about what exactly could be helpful, and then it's about results, ultimately, business results. Yeah. So about 6 to 9 months, I'd say. Which, I mean, I think other companies, probably their ability may be shorter or longer, but that doesn't mean that we weren't able to do all of this stuff. It was about getting them to a point where they could speak about UX and Lean the way that I speak about it. And now that was my goal, and that's where we're at now.
Have you explored design sprints at Nordstrom, and what were your experiences?
The what?
Design sprints, so those
Design
five
sprints.
days.
Yeah, so it's a great question. I think we do have, we've done them before, and they've been extremely valuable for us because they allow us to sort of focus and direct it. So some of those MVPs that I talked about, we did design sprints for that because we didn't have time. And so that's how we were able to optimize the number of people and the amount of time to actually get a potential MVP out there. So we do it quite often. We don't do it on actual experiences that have, mostly we do it on areas where we don't have a lot of information and we need to gather it really quickly. So the e-gifting example and also dynamic looks.
Cool. One last question.
Okay.
What would be the next step after paper prototyping? Is it wireframing or development?
You know, it really depends, and I think there's a process for everything that goes through from an academic standpoint that I think is really important to follow. As low fidelity as you can stay until you know for sure that the concept is worth moving forward is my suggestion. For us, there are times when, and I'm still working through this, like I said, this is not a perfect science. Some of my team will start with a higher fidelity prototype, and we end up losing time and energy, and we have to prove that out. So my suggestion would be, as quickly as you can get from a sketch to a wireframe to an interaction design, and there's a lot of prototyping tools that are really quick and dirty that you can invest in for your teams, and that has been an unlock for us. So we've, in the last 6 to 9 months, invested in a bunch of new tools that make us a lot faster, which isn't a developed piece of code. That's really where you want to be pretty sure at the end.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.